Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Philip Palumbo. I'm the host of the Palumbo Podcast, where we interview some of the most successful founders of businesses to learn about their experience and how they got to the top. Today, we have with us Mark Salisbury, the co-founder and CEO of TuitionFit, an innovative online platform dedicated to creating transparency in college pricing for students and families. Mark has over 25 years of experience in higher education. He holds a PhD in higher education from the University of Iowa and focuses on how colleges succeed or fail in supporting student learning and growth. Mark's work and insights on higher education pricing have been featured by NPR, Forbes, the Chronicle of Higher Education, and other major outlets. He's also the co-author of the book Study Abroad in a New Global Century. Mark is a passionate advocate for equity, student agency, and expanding educational and career options after high school. So, Mark, welcome to the Palumbo Pulse.
It's great to be here. How are you, sir?
All right, doing great. Thanks for coming on board here. So the first question, Mark, if you don't mind, tell us a little about exactly what your company does so we could better understand your product offering.
Sure. The premise behind the whole company is you've got a marketplace. People buying college, finding ways to get their kids to get a college degree. Your college selling education. They got to keep the lights on, and you got a marketplace going on where neither side really has a good idea of what the actual prices are. So what we built with TuitionFit was a way to essentially crowdsource and create that data set. And the idea behind it was, if that data set exists, it can benefit everybody in the marketplace, whether it's families and students looking for schools, whether it's colleges and universities trying to be competitive in a marketplace where there's fewer and fewer students every year.
So how did you get into this business?
Well, you spend a lot of time in higher education like I have, and you start to see some of the real sort of structural flaws in the marketplace, and especially as you see it change over a couple of decades. 25 years ago, there were lots of students, and schools were doing great, and you could just finally, look out the front door and grab another student or two. Well, that's changed dramatically over time, and colleges really weren't built for that. In the meantime, the public knows that they got to get education after high school, some kind of degree, and they're getting increasingly frustrated at just not being able to say, I've got X amount of dollars to spend on college, which school should I look at? So as you watch that sort of playing out and you watch that affecting the marketplace pretty negatively, you start to think about, well, how could somebody fix this? And like lots of marketplaces, both sides are sort of stuck in their corner, and you start to see, at least that I did, well, somebody's got to fix this thing, and there's an opportunity here. And so we dove in and tried to come up with a way to sort of play that middle space and build the data set.
So in other words, what happens is the public now can go to your company and get an idea of what college actually specifically costs, specific colleges you're interested in, or perhaps you can filter and come up with, say if I want to spend, I don't know, 50 grand a year, for my child or children, I could go on your website, I could filter, and certain schools will come up. How does it work exactly?
There's a couple of different ways it works, but essentially you have the idea, right? That traditionally, and if people just sort of do what they think they should do, they start looking at schools without knowing what prices are which. And in a marketplace, well, the schools are going to sell something to try to get you into the funnel and way down there and emotionally sold on it before you find out what your price is. And for a lot of folks, that's created a lot of problems. We know that we're talking trillions of dollars in student debt. So the families can sort of reverse the process and think about, well, I got X number of dollars to spend on college. Which schools should I look at? And we're the only place where you can go and start to find that out.
That's really interesting. I can see that. I can see that marketplace being a great option, a great opportunity to really to get a sense of where. Because I think a lot of kids in their head they say, hey, I want to go down south. I want to go to Tampa. I want to go to University of Miami, and they just outwardly say that. Parents say, great, let's go visit the school, but nobody's really checking. Well, what does it actually cost to go there, per semester or per year? And so you have a tool to do that, which is really terrific. and it helps guide people. So what type of feedback have you been getting as a result of your product from families?
Well, you get a lot of, I didn't know I could do this. You get people saying, I've already talked to my kid about what schools they want to go to, and now I'm looking at seeing the sticker prices that are now over $100,000 a year, and I'm realizing we can't pay that. That's crazy. And then their kid says, I want to be a doctor, and they go, oh, wait, 4 or 5 more years of that? There's no way, right? So in that moment, a lot of folks just feel like they don't have a lot of power. And what we see with TuitionFit data is all of a sudden the sense of, man, I can pick. I have agency. I got power in this marketplace. I can actually dictate what price we pay, and I can start to think about that in a strategic sense that allows me to plan, right? And organize how I'm going to do this college thing in the context of retirement questions. Build your own business. My kid wants to go to graduate school. I got 3 other ones coming along. All of those issues that they couldn't really tackle previously.
And so in your data set, you have costs from medical schools as well, law schools, not just undergrad?
We started with undergrad stuff, and that's where our focal point is. We may grow into that direction, but we have really started with the undergraduate question. And the college prices really aren't random. They're laid out and planned out by the schools themselves. And so once you start seeing thousands of financial aid offer letters from different types of students, if you know enough about that type of student, pretty soon you're looking at essentially a giant Sudoku puzzle. You can fill in the gaps, and you can start to see what's actually going on at any given school.
So for example, if I'm saying to myself, I want to go to either college A or college B, and then I go on your website and I discover that college A is 50 grand, college B is 25 grand a semester. Am I able to understand the differences between both colleges? Maybe I want to understand acceptance rates, right? Any fundamental differences between both the colleges? Is that type of information available as well, or is it just strictly monetary?
We are just about the price. One of the things that we just chose to do early on is we're agnostic about which school you pick, and we're not trying to tell you where you should go. What we know about college student success in and after college is that over the course of the 4 years, the decision that student makes to either plug in or sort of do the minimum, that's the stuff that drives your success after college. So given that, we're just going to make sure you can line up the price range that you want to pay with the colleges that you're looking at. And then after that, you got to dive in, and you got to do a little bit of work to dig. We don't set up a sort of one-stop shop for picking a college based on whatever criteria that folks want, in large part because let's let people do their research after the fact that they've built this sense of, okay, these are the schools that are going to fit our price range. These are the schools that aren't. So let's not bother looking there. And that's one of the things that has gotten people in so much trouble over the past couple of decades.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing what your business is about and how it works and the benefit. And the great thing, when you said in the beginning, for anyone out there who's looking to start a business or get into an existing business, right, or industry, it's really trying to solve for a problem. That's the first step we all have to make and say, okay, well, I'm in this business, I'm in wealth management, you're in an educational type business. And for you solved for a problem that was needed, and because of that, we'll talk about it in a moment, you're having success. But that really is like step one, and it's not easy. I mean, like for example, many people get into law today, anybody become a doctor, or if you're an entrepreneur, you want to get into some type of different business, but everything is about really solving a problem that's there in a particular company or industry that you want to improve upon. So I just quickly want to go through that. So you had a moment in time that you recognized that there was a problem. And then you said to yourself, because you had, there was no business at that moment, but you said to yourself, there's a problem, I'm going to solve for it, I'm going to create a business in solving for that, right? That's going to be profitable for you and your family and help somebody else out. So just tell me and walk me through that process.
I love how you made it sound like it went so well right away. um, we started this late 2018 into 2019, and some tongue in cheek here, but some truth. Lesson number one: don't start a big education-based business on the eve of a global pandemic. Just a hint, don't do that.
I got one on you though, but I'll tell you that in a second.
So you're exactly right. I saw this, and I'm not the only one. A lot of people saw this coming over a period of time. Colleges sort of adopted this high sticker price, high discount pricing model and funnel approach way back in the 90s. And it just became more and more prominent and more exaggerated over the next couple of decades. So more and more of the public was getting frustrated by this. And it's one thing to see that there's this problem, but it's another thing to see the problem and not really understand it from the perspective of the parties that are engaged in it, right? The public, when we first started just showing them the real prices, crickets. Right? It didn't really change anything because we didn't really understand the degree to which what we were actually solving for was agency and not just here's the actual numbers. For the colleges, they have built their whole system on this kind of a funnel. And so it wasn't such an easy thing to just sort of peel that back. And you had to sort of know that when the higher education world, we talk about this demographic cliff, which is right after the last financial collapse, people stopped having kids at the same rate and continued for a long time. Now we're at the point where all of those reset numbers of number of kids in a family are graduating from high school. So all of a sudden, the numbers of students graduating from high school every year are on a trend now to be down by 15% in 10 years. Colleges were built to have a lot more students than that would set up, right? So you have all these things sort of happening, and it took a little while for us to figure out, okay, we recognize there's a problem here, but then how do you understand that problem in order to solve it from the perspective of the parties you're trying to solve it for?
And so what was that leap of faith that you said, okay, I'm going to go into business and I'm going to start this business up and get rocking and rolling?
Yeah, this is one of those, the public can't fix this because...
What year was this, by the way?
This was 2018.
2018. 18. And
Right.
what did you do? What did you do prior to that?
I was working at a small college here in the Midwest, and I had spent 20 some years working in colleges, universities in different roles. So I started in athletics, and I was in admissions and financial aid, and then did my PhD and spent the last 8 years basically eyeball deep in higher education data and seeing the trends and trying to understand how do we use this information to make the system better.
So you were essentially employee most of your life.
Yep.
And now you're 100% of your income comes from your own business.
Right. And I stepped out of higher education, which was a little bit of a shock. It's a interesting thing to have been in sort of large entity for a long time. That, by the way, is not exactly the most entrepreneurial space ever, right? Higher education is not known for making quick change. So
right.
When I jumped into this space, it was, okay, this is different, and I'm going to have to figure this out. And there were a lot of face plants along the way as you sort of learn what the world looks like outside of that ecosystem.
And that's the part that's, always amazes me because like you and me as well, I was in a big company and I launched my own firm back in January 2020, after leaving a major financial firm, right? And like you kind of take that leap of faith, which I did and you did. So when you made that leap of faith, you weren't sure if you were going to land on your feet. Would you agree with me?
I was absolutely unsure.
Right.
I was really no idea, but it was one of those, I've been doing one thing for a long time and I see this need and somebody's got to fix it, and I don't see anybody else fixing it in a way that I think will work. So, okay.
So those that are listening to this that may be an employee today and they're saying to themselves, well, how did Mark, he left his job as an employee, he started this business. What did he do for cash flow in the interim until the business started to work?
That is absolutely one of those things that kept me up at night quite a bit. And a couple of things. One is we were able to raise a little bit of seed money to help us get
great.
started. And then I was able to take some of my expertise and turn it into consulting work on the side to sort of supplement as you go. But there was, you talk to founders and entrepreneurs a lot, and the amount of time people spend fretting about runway, and how much time you got left and how much money you got left, that's not insignificant. That takes a toll. And that was a big part of thinking about how do we figure out ways to extend that runway as we grow this thing. And then, as I said, global pandemic, higher education sort of freezes over for a couple of years. Weirdly, that forced us to rethink a whole bunch, while at the same time created a bit of momentum that we really needed. Because suddenly people were saying, man, price actually really matters to me now.
Right.
And, it was kind of a ripping the Band-Aid off for a lot of folks. Then we were in a position to be able to help them.
So now that you fast forward 7 years since you launched your firm and you look back, are you happy you made that move?
It sounds crazy, but I don't think I had a choice. This was just a thing that I had to do. And you can look back and say, well, of course you had a choice. Well, I don't know if I did. I really felt like, as I look back on it, if I hadn't have done this, I would have thought every day, why didn't you? What would have happened if, right?
So was it more about you wanting to do this because you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or because solving for this problem, or both?
It had to be about solving the problem.
Wow.
Right. It just had to be looking at this marketplace and saying, people are going to have to learn more after high school. I don't know of a single 17-year-old who doesn't need to learn anything more ever, right? So if they're going to have to learn more in high school, they're probably going to get that learning from higher education institutions, big, small colleges. And so those colleges have to be healthy. They have to exist. And if all of that sort of falls apart, the long-term effect is not going to be good for us. And I happen to live out here in the Midwest, where in every small town, it seems like there's a small college, and that small college is sort of the biggest employer in town and keeping a lot of things going in that small community. If all those colleges go out of business, we got big problems. So there was a real sense of somebody's got to fix this, and everybody in the marketplace already is sort of stuck in their ways.
So Mark, the main issue that you saw is people, students that were going to undergrad, they were getting involved with these colleges that they like, and they were having visits and so forth, and getting to the ninth inning and then once they get to the ninth inning, they're hooked. Right. And at this point, they're going to mom and dad, or mom or dad, and saying, hey, I want to go here. And the mom and dad's like, oh my gosh, this is much more than I thought. But then mom and dad feel bad, and they end up funding it because this is where their child wants to go. Is that basically what you're saying?
You're exactly right. This is a process where, students are asked to pick, and families are said, make a list of schools, like get it down to a list of 20 schools. And it's sort of a choice overload problem. There's so many colleges out there, and there's so much social pressure to sort of pick a set of schools that other people have heard of. So you very quickly just narrow a list down. And as soon as that happens, now that's that student's world of options. Mom and dad encourage him, apply, get some applications in, you got to do that. You get to January, February, March of the student's senior year, and now you start seeing the actual prices. But the time to add other options in the mix is long gone. And so the deadlines to apply are long gone. The sense in your head of, I've already narrowed it down to this school. I've already taken a visit to that place. I've already got friends that are looking there too. We're talking about living together next year. All these different things. And as a parent, the parent says, man, if I tell them they can't go to that school, like, I'm a bad parent. Like, I failed, right?
Right.
So you get all these really interesting pressures that happen. And what has transpired as a function of that is a whole generation of students going off to college, borrowing at the last minute to sort of solve a very short-term, high-pressure problem, making a whole lot of bad choices in the context of that pressure, and then dropping out, not finishing. Mom and dad having far more debt.
Not finishing because the
not finishing college.
Because of the
2 years
affordability.
in, yeah, just financially you can't keep doing it.
Right. Right.
And now you're in a worse place, right? Because you got no degree, but you still got the debt. Lucky you, right? So you got a real problem there for a whole generation of millennials, and this has been written about over and over and over. What happens to people when they have 6 figures in student debt that they can't begin to pay off, and it postpones their ability to get their own place, to get their own life started, to start planning for retirement, to get married, to have kids, all these other factors as a function of this debt. And when that reputation gets around to the next generation, pretty soon folks start saying, you know what, I don't trust this higher ed thing. I don't know if it's worth it. Well, that's what we're seeing now. And as a function of that, people are starting to sort of throw their hands up at the whole system. And we don't have a better one.
So your concern is not only just for the student, but you said it before. So is your concern also for the universities?
Absolutely.
Because of what? Because of why?
So, over time, you've got a whole set of colleges and universities, mostly the smaller private ones, but not entirely so, that have found they wanted to set a high sticker price, and they were setting sticker prices way up high, mostly to sort of give them the sense that they were just as good as the really expensive schools. Then underneath that, they would just say, well, we'll just discount liberally to get people in the door, right, at the last minute. We'll give you an extra scholarship here and there, make it work. Great. That only works for so long. And what has transpired is, and again, out where I am, in a lot of small colleges in smaller towns, smaller mid-sized towns, where their actual price now is less than the public institution in the state that everybody's heard of. But those small places can't get anybody to come look at them because the sticker price is over the moon. And just saying, oh, it's okay, we got lots of scholarship money, just doesn't cut it. The family doesn't believe that. So now you've got a marketplace where the best value, they can't get people to come look at them because they've got a pricing model from several decades ago that now just doesn't work. And colleges and universities for a very long time have taken the mindset that, we just recruit students to our school. We don't talk about anybody else's school. We don't look to see what those schools are charging. We're just sort of this maybe a little bit higher moral plane than everybody else. And so it's just about sort of converting you to be one of our students. Well, that doesn't work. Can you think of another marketplace where you go out there and you don't know what your competitors charge, but you're going to make it just fine? No, that's not going to work.
The biggest problem, as a planner for my clients, the biggest problem is just this cost of education. I mean, it just continues to go up on average 6% per year. Many colleges today can cost all in $110,000 per year. Mm-hmm. And you say to yourself, talk about like return on investment. If I spend $420,000, $440,000, $450,000 for one child over the course of just undergrad, mm-hmm. What's the return on that, right? And then what's the break even, in terms of, for that child, in terms of the salary that child's going to make and income and job they're going to receive. And today, with AI, it's becoming even more problematic mm-hmm. for kids to find jobs coming out of college. So I just don't. What I don't understand is how colleges get away with charging so much money per year. Like I don't understand. I just don't understand it.
And this is one of the fascinating sort of somehow combine that old kid story of the Emperor's New Clothes with Wizard of Oz. You get this really weird thing going on. Only 1 out of 10 students are paying the sticker price anywhere. 9 out of 10 are paying substantially less. And you take a whole swath of private colleges, the average discount amongst all the students at that school getting a discount is over 50% off the sticker price.
So what do you mean? So what I just said in terms of cost, $100,000 a year. You're saying that
Nobody's paying that.
What's the other 9 out of 10 are going to that same exact university and they're saying, what? I got a coupon with 50% off. I'm joking, but what do you mean exactly?
You're not far off. You're not far off at all. The marketplace turns out it runs just like any other marketplaces, where if you have tons of demand, lots and lots of people want to come to your school, you can treat things a certain way in terms of how you give financial aid. Take the most selective places. They don't give any merit aid. They don't have to. They got tons of people who want to go there.
Right.
And you got a set of affluent folks who are paying the sticker price because they can. But you've got families making $300,000 a year who are getting substantial discounts off that sticker price because the school has a formula that says you don't have enough money to pay our sticker price, so we'll give you some financial aid. And the kicker's getting in, right? These schools have a single-digit acceptance rate. But just underneath that set of schools, that's less than 100 colleges and universities around the country. There's 1,000 schools where you can get the same quality of education. Turns out that there's no extra chapters in Jane Eyre if you're at Harvard than if you're at the local community college. It's the same book. Algebra is the same. But at those schools that are just underneath that very thin layer, they have been having to give out a lot more financial aid over time. And so the key for some of the folks you're talking about, some of your clients who are saying, how in the world should I pay $105,000 a year, or $450 over 4 years? Well, it turns out most people aren't paying that. But you have to know enough about the system to be able to get at what the actual price for a student like yours is at any particular institution. And that's the part that was always hard to do.
So Mark, going back into the business aspect of what you do, right? So again, you have this great idea, you put it into a business, it's working terrific. And I always say all the time, you can make a widget, I can make a widget. If yours is better than mine, but I'm a better marketer, I'm going to win the race to revenue and profitability. So when you built your business ready to go, how do you market?
We learned early on that the way you think, the way that you think to market this might not be the best way to do it. What I mean by that is, in the marketplace of like advertising on social media, advertising on Google, things like that, there's a whole lot of folks advertising there that's driving those prices up. And what we wanted to do is stay underneath that. Now, all of this blows up as soon as the pandemic kicks in. And so we sort of started to learn one set of lessons, and then rug gets pulled out, and so we had to learn a different set of lessons. But what we learned how to do was figure out how do we get to people with this information by teaming up and partnering with other organizations that are offering different services to those people that those people are paying for. So instead of us trying to sort of carve out and get a hold of everybody ourselves, we found that a partnership strategy worked far better. And so we've ended up leaning hard into that over the past several years.
That's terrific. Good for you. So Mark, I always talk about, we all have a business and we have profits at the end of the year, hopefully, right? So assuming we have profits at the end of the year, we got to make a decision, right? With that, let's say you have $1 profits. What do we do with that? Do we take part of that and put it off to the side in stocks, real estate, to build up wealth outside your business so you don't have all your eggs in one basket? or do we reinvest in our business? We save taxes when we do that on those dollars, which it's really hard to get a return here to make up for that. How do you think about wealth management?
You know, for our business, what we really tried to take, what we realized was a very different perspective. We really tried to play the long game. And that's, I think, a logic that has translated well for us. There were an awful lot of ways that, you could go out and quickly get instant capital to sort of throw into this thing. And we saw pretty quickly that if we did that the way that we were doing what we were doing, if we did that, we would probably feel great for a year or two. But over the long haul, that wouldn't work for us. So what we did was, let's take the long view and just really try to keep our efforts, our funds, organized in such a way that we can stay with any kind of up and downturn. And we were fortunate enough to, or unfortunate enough, depending on how you want to look at it, we hit a big change when the pandemic kicked in, and that actually really helped us.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So, anything else? Actually, just one last thing I want to ask you though, regarding culture and core principles, right? So, how do you think about that as it relates to your business?
Yeah, that was a big important piece of the puzzle. It was very much get some people around me that think differently than I do and listen to them. Trust that they actually know something that I don't, that they see something that I don't. And that turned out to be a really important value that not only did it save us from a whole lot of different things over time, but it also created a culture in which anybody could step up and say, that's not a good idea. Here's why. I'm curious about that, or I'm concerned about this. And that helped us, I think, navigate through some tougher waters, is to have that culture early on. And that's something that we've really tried to cultivate, really a sort of flat system of everybody has got a voice, and where they sit creates a different perspective that you gotta know, you gotta hear, you gotta understand.
Yeah, I love that. For me, as the leader of my firm, and one of the key things I think for all of us as leading a firm and being the CEO and owner of the firm is really asking employees, what can I do better? What am I doing wrong? How can I improve things? What do you see? And hopefully they're honest with you, and hopefully you create an environment where they can be honest with you, which I do feel like I've done here. And I think that's paramount, because I do listen to them, and I do get certain things that they say that really is helpful. And it's like eye-opening. It's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize I was doing this or that or whatever it may be. So it's all part of both of us really improving everything in terms of relates to the business. So Mark, actually, one last thing. So the one of the things that I coach a lot of my clients on is being exit ready, meaning that a lot of us as owners of a business, we have our head in the sand in a positive way, right? We're trying to put together the best product, the best platform for our clients, which is really most important. But at the same token, owners of businesses, we got to always take a step back and say, well, am I operating my current business at what I call best in class? Meaning that, when you take your firm, there's a certain value of your firm, and there's other competitors out there. There may or may not be, and you do have a unique business, but let's assume there is. Right, so those other firms that are out there, let's say they're operating where they can sell their business at 7 to 8 times EBITDA, and you can sell it 3 to 4 times. We all have to say, well, what do I need to do to get to 7, 8? What is my competitor doing that I'm not doing? And so, not that we have to be prepared to sell your business tomorrow, but being exit ready means that you're always running at best in class on a continuous basis. So if and when you are ready, even if it's 10 years down the road, that your business is ready. Do you think about that?
That's a great question to think about, and as I've gotten older, I think about it more, right? You can't turn back the clock. But you start to think about, okay, are we in the kind of position where we could go left or right? If an opportunity comes up, you could go left, you could go right. And early on, I don't think I really grasped that as well as I do now. That it's just, are you ready for the next opportunity? And it translates to the way that we talk with families and everybody in this marketplace about how you treat cost. The goal isn't actually going to college. The goal is launching as a successful young adult. So college is just a conduit to get there. When you shape it that way, now all of a sudden you start to have that mindset of, I have a lot more control and I need to be ready for whatever opportunity pops up.
Right.
And that's a mindset that we've learned to sort of adapt to and embrace. Because right now in my space, this space is, you don't know what's coming. You really don't, right? No higher education institution had mapped out 2 years ago the change in administrations in Washington and how that was going to shape the higher education landscape. Nobody saw that, right?
Right.
But be ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with you. And the good thing about business today also is not, when it comes to exiting, it's not, you don't have to completely exit. You could even just do sell part of it to a private equity company, have them help you through resources, build your company. So there's these great opportunities for us as business owners to always be thinking about. So I'll leave it with you, Mark, as the last word in regards to what you do, what you want the audience to know about your company, or anything else that's on your mind.
Well, I think that everybody's got some sense of what this process, thinking about college and thinking about it through the ROI lens, either coming or they just went through it, right? And I would suggest to everybody the way that we approach this is to really think about maximizing the ROI here, and that you have a lot more control over that maximizing than folks think. Colleges don't want you to think that you have a lot of control. They want you to think that if you go to that school, now all of a sudden you're set because you're associated with that name. But that's not how things work out. And we all know people who have very winding paths and turn out to be very successful. So I think it's really helpful to sort of take that mindset. One, if you haven't gone through the college search process with your kids, you're going to take that mindset. And then two, apply that mindset to the way that you do what you do every day. Because I think it positions you then to be more available to nuance and change. And probably the one constant we're all getting used to is nuance and change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is terrific, Mark. Thanks so much for your insights, perspective. Congratulations on your success. Wishing you all the best. And I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Phil. All the best to you.
All right. Thank you.